Jack.
Hey, Alex. What's up, man?
Hey. I want to say hi, Jack, and I'm gonna hijack this episode right now.
Let's just cut it right now.
I'm serious. I know that you think you're in control, but right now, for the next 5 minutes, you're not. And the reason you're not is because this was a really historical week. The reason why this week is so historical is because it was your birthday.
Oh.
And it was a big birthday.
Thank
Not
you.
going to tell anybody what number.
Yeah.
That's up to them.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a special segment.
Thanks.
This is Jack's special day episode. Almost. I have a couple of nifty gifts for you.
Whoa. Where'd this come from? Look at this. Whoa. What?
Are you ready to see your gifts, Jack?
I wasn't expecting this.
Well, dude,
live on the air.
So we got to celebrate earlier this week. Over the weekend, we had a great time. We
Look
got
at
to
you.
see.
This is
we got
amazing.
to see some comedy after dinner, but I never got to give you your.
Well,
your
tell them we went to a comedy show after dinner, and it was in the studio.
It was in the studio.
Pretty cool.
Ari held it down with Don't Tell Comedy. It was great.
Yeah,
we had a really good time. But I didn't get to give you your gift. So,
okay.
So
I was wondering where my gift was.
I'm going to give them to you live. So I got you a couple of things. Okay.
Okay.
This is just from the heart.
No, I love it.
So the first thing I got you was 2 bags from our favorite beef jerky company in Santa Fe.
Yeah. This is great. Great plug for them, by the way.
The Oakley's Jerky Company, which is, again, we're not. Yeah. I wish I was paid and sponsored by them.
Somebody tells me this is not in their budget to sponsor us or anyone.
They should. Yeah. Given the amount that I spend on their jerky.
Oakley's Jerky Company. Right here,
super
folks.
Delicious.
Yeah.
So from our time in Santa Fe, we found these guys by accident.
Can I be honest? I think this is more for you because you loved this.
I got myself 2 bags also.
Okay. Should we just leave it up here the whole time?
I thought you liked it.
Okay,
you could leave it out. You could leave it out for now.
I like it.
The second gift that I have for you panders to your alter ego.
Okay.
And what is your alter ego?
There's my Bushwick, other life.
Bushwick Brooklyn guy. You want to be a cool Brooklyn guy.
Yeah. If like in a whole nother world, I would move to Bushwick, Brooklyn, and wear fedoras and
not fedoras. You wear beanies and that sort of thing. And where would you work?
I'd work at a coffee shop.
All right,
sure.
So you want to be a fancy hipster Brooklyn barista,
stress-free job.
So
in the world.
I got you some bags of Brooklyn Bean Roastery coffee,
dude. This is unreal. I really was not. This is not rehearsed. I had no idea.
I actually got you a full assortment. And my favorite one is the Brooklyn Bean Roastery Forget About It blend.
Oh, that's amazing.
So this is part of your alter ego.
I'll treasure it forever. Thank you.
These guys are delicious. I know you're going to brew.
The problem
your own
with this
coffee
is
now.
I need an actual coffee machine.
We don't need to talk about that.
All right.
We don't need to talk about that. All right. The point is, you got.
Was this like a 4-for-1 special? What was the
dude? You're asking the wrong questions. All right. Last gift is an important one. As you're aging, right? You've done a good job. You know, everybody tunes in. I like to say for your brains and my looks, but the reality is it might be partially your looks.
Okay.
So I thought about how do we preserve Jack's looks forever? And I figured it out. It took me a minute, but I figured it out. And Jack,
what is this?
I'm going to preserve your youth forever with the mini Jack Stone.
Whoa. First off, who is this guy?
That's you from our photo shoot.
This is a custom bobblehead.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, he's really good looking. This is not me.
He's a pretty good looking dude.
This is not me.
Look at that tight porcelain skin.
Look at this. I don't know if the camera zooms in on this at all, but
we got mini Jack Stone.
That's amazing. Dude, that is the most amazing. I appreciate it. Thank you. Dude. I'm going to give you a big hug after this.
Love you, man.
And I guess I put this bobblehead on my desk and people ask.
We might change the engraving to Big Boss.
Yeah. Boss man.
But I was like, we gotta keep Jack young forever. And here you finally have the ability.
That is so funny. Okay, well, thanks.
Of course,
Thank
man.
you.
Of course.
God, I don't even know how to get into anything real now.
Well,
did we talk about real news?
We've got plenty of real news. It has been a fun week. I know the world revolves around you, Jack.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
I get it.
That's me. It's a birthday month for me.
It's a birthday month, but we do have to move on and talk about,
Hooters.
Some current
we
event.
Want to talk about
Hooters.
Hooters.
Do. That's exactly out of my first serious topics. I wanted to talk about Hooters.
Yeah.
So, aside from the April Fool's, prank that everybody read that Jeff Bezos might have bought Hooters, he didn't. It's been, repurchased through a consortium of the original founder and a couple other investors. I didn't even know that was
an April Fool's joke. That was a thing where Bezos said he bought Hooters.
I don't know if it came from Bezos, but I believe Hooters themselves might have posted it. It was
okay, because they filed bankruptcy. Hooters hasn't been doing too hot in recent years.
Yeah, so some combination of the beautiful women and chicken wings didn't help them.
By the
survive.
way, and I'm shocked it's held on as long as it has. With the
can you imagine woke culture?
That's what I'm saying.
Hooters.
How the hell has it held on this long?
That talks to the resiliency of the company.
It sure does.
But yeah, so. Anyway, the joke was obviously Bezos bought it and they're going to do a Whole Foods model and push local honey through Hooters, which I thought was really funny. But that's not the case. That's fake news.
Yeah.
They've got about 300 restaurants. They've closed half over the last decade.
There's about 150 or so over the last decade.
So, which is
I think they still have 300 restaurants. So at one point they had 450 or 500. Who's counting?
So then they closed a third or so. Yeah. But I actually passed the sad, broken down Hooters off New Jersey Turnpike on the way to go see my folks in Jersey. But anyway, they bought it, and do you know what they're doing? They're making it.
No, stop. What are they? They're repurposing it into a Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Great Wolf Lodge. Well, in a way they are. So they're making it a family-friendly environment.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, which I think is very funny. I saw this. I mean, gone are the days of bikini nights, which I didn't even know was a thing. And they're highlighting fresher, higher quality ingredients now.
Yeah.
And they want to have more family nights.
When I go to Hooters, my biggest concern is seed oils in the chicken.
That's right. Yeah. Those saturated fats and monotriglycerides.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So their CEO said that they do programs like Wings for Children. For education. They sponsor first responders, Veterans Day, breast cancer programs, the V Foundation, Joe DiMaggio's Children's Hospital. These are all, I mean, a little bit of a virtue signal here, but that's great that they're doing some good stuff and they're trying to rebrand.
Yeah.
What happens to all these Hooters throughout the country, right? I mean, if 150 have closed in the last decade, it's kind of interesting. These floor plans are, I mean, they can do a lot with them, actually, and they've been repurposed
Amazon
into
distribution centers.
All sorts of things. Yeah.
Now, hats off to them if they can make it work. I would love to see a family-friendly Hooters in the near future.
It's so funny, man. By the way, I have not been to Hooters since I was maybe 12. So, and also most of their clientele, apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, this is what I read, is women and children. Which is not what you would think.
I would have thought, I can see the dads bringing their sons kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a weird. Never would my dad have ever been like, dad. Jack, we're going to Hooters.
Not your dad.
And I don't think your dad either.
I've been there with my dad.
No, you haven't.
I have.
All right. Well,
I have.
I stand corrected.
We have a different bond. I get that guy.
I've seen firsthand how the right platform can make all the difference for advisors and their clients. With decades of collective experience in investment sales, debt placement, and equity placement services, Graysteel has built a culture where collaboration, relationships, and excellence power results. Backed by concierge-level infrastructure, proprietary technology, and an entrepreneurial mindset, the firm enables professionals like myself and our team to deliver tailored solutions, precision-driven pricing strategies, AI-enhanced insights, and exceptional value at every stage. Discover how top professionals are scaling their business and continually unlocking new opportunities for their clients at graysteel.com. All right.
What else is happening?
Well, I think REITs are in the news a little bit.
REITs
Look,
in the news.
Here's the thing. REITs are doing a lot of developments now, and your private developers out there they don't have the capital to be doing deals. But guess who does? REITs, very historically, low levered, a lot of cash on hand.
Yeah, have been rebalancing a lot of their portfolios.
That's right.
I think even Mark from KBS talked about it a little bit.
Yep.
REITs have done a good job kind of offloading some of the hurting office or retail or whatever it was, and just kind of hoarding cash. Nobody's even really necessarily ramped up multifamily developments. Permits, yes, but now.
Well, and that's the thing, and this is kind of old news, and people talk about it maybe too much, but it's just the cliff, that big nosedive of new developments in multifamily. So 2024 historical 550,000 units, give or take, coming online in the U.S. By 2026, it's projected to be somewhere around 275.
That's a big drop off. I mean,
huge.
You still have to eat up the 500,000 units, but I feel like that's getting taken offline in Miami in a year's time.
Right.
But so if they're continuing to build throughout the Sun Belt, maybe some Texas markets.
Well, and that's the thing, though.
Carolinas.
I mean, if there's such a big drop off, these REITs will be in a great position come 2027 to just crush it, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting play. It's a little bit of like the Hines model. So we know right now with tariffs, which we'll get into, costs are up. There's a labor shortage. Like nothing is cheaper. Rates are still elevated. So it's not like construction financing is necessarily cheap, but they're seeing the opportunity to say, hey, if we're in the market today, if we eat these, minor costs, we're probably going to have outsized growth on the tail end. And Hines kind of is, as everybody used to try to guess, what's the next big market? Is it Nashville? Is it Austin? Is it Phoenix? Hines is like, just go where the people have been going. And every time they've done that, they've outperformed their tertiary markets, 2 to 5x. So it's a little bit of that. And I think that's pretty interesting to see, all the big players.
And in the multifamily news in the REIT space, I mean, Avalon Bay, Camden, MAA, UDR, those are some of the big players breaking ground on some new developments and taking advantage of just that big cliff of new deliveries that's, people got to live somewhere. And if properties stop being developed for a couple of years, there's just soaring demand for new product.
Yeah, and these groups have much longer timelines than private capital. I mean, the age of the syndicator, it's not that it goes away permanently, but it almost ceases to exist in these flux times right now, where like the added construction costs or the elevated rates just takes them off the map.
Yeah,
it becomes that much harder to do deals. And plus, what private syndicator or what private capital group has more experience than and more bandwidth and more of a team than one of these large REITs. Yeah,
it's kind of funny, and we're kind of digressing a bit, I know, but I've seen personally so many syndicators go from raising capital for existing product out there and implementing the value add to saying, hey, hold on, this doesn't make any sense anymore. Let me go develop.
Yeah.
And now a lot of those syndicators are in big trouble because rates have skyrocketed. A lot of these markets have been just inundated with new product. But, it's interesting to see, this private capital syndication space kind of pivot from one area to the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, to that point, right, walking down what's the idiom, like walking down history lane, something like that? Don't leave it to me. I'm not an English major. But like Sam Zell, right?
Yeah.
Was one of the largest owners ever, $5 billion at a peak in time. He's like, I don't develop. The costs are too crazy. It's too unpredictable. And what are we, better than Sam Zell? I think he was pretty good in his career.
Everyone loves Sam Zell.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me. All right, well, let's talk about the volatility in Treasuries right now.
Sure.
And as we're recording this, a lot of shit's been happening.
Yeah.
Now, everything's changing day to day. So by the time you, our listeners, our thousands of listeners are listening to this, who knows where we'll be. But, treasuries have been very volatile. We just saw the biggest 3-day swing in treasuries since December 2001. Yeah. So the 10-year jumped from 387 to 4.4.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And that's within 3 days.
Yeah, you're talking about a 60 bips jump, which sounds nominal, but it's not when it comes to treasuries. People forget how many trillions are circulating in the world of just US paper. Yeah. So as we're talking about this, we're coming off the day where the market ripped back. Trump announced a 90-day standstill on the tariffs.
Mm-hmm. The market just swung both ways.
The market swung. The NASDAQ and S&P are being compared to meme coins, just like how much they jumped back. So it's a very interesting time. Trump always causes volatility. Even during his first term, he has the ability to just tweet something, say something, and the market reacts like crazy. But right now, there's all the tension around tariffs and trade and what had ended up happening if we recap the events. So Trump comes out with the reciprocal tariffs and imposes whatever it was, like 50 of these what he called reciprocal, what we have now found out that are not necessarily reciprocal.
And we already talked about this with Courtney Reagan the other day from CNBC. But I mean, these reciprocal tariffs, I mean, they're not taking into account services, which the U.S. outperforms on versus goods. And
there's a lot that it misses out on, right? And for instance, like we tend to forget that there's countries that export one good to us. Right. So coffee, right? And then we go and impose a 40% tariff on that country. Right? There's an imbalance to what we're actually buying. Right. There's a lot of imbalances, but that's kind of a main one. So what it ended up happening is the U.S. imposed a bunch of tariffs. Very quickly, the economically weaker countries, came back and said, okay, we're willing to negotiate. We know it's been a long time. We'll get off the baseline. Which is really, that was the main goal. That's great and all. We're waiting on the big ones. The big one is China. China holds, almost $800 billion of American debt. And I want to get into that in a second.
Yeah, second to Japan in terms of foreign holders of our debt.
That's right. So what had ended up happening is a lot of them scaled back, but it's not what really moves the needle for America. So now we're going to start renegotiating with China. And I was telling you about this earlier, but I was reading a Ray Dalio article or, story rant that he, tends to post.
He's your idol. You love him.
He's such a, smart guy, undeniably. But he has a very good way of breaking down these really complex topics. All right. So the one thing that he talked about is we have both a capital and a trade imbalance with China. All right. So the trade imbalance, we export, we import way more, than we export to them. Right. So that's the trade imbalance. And the capital imbalance is how much debt they hold from the U.S., which I mentioned is around $800 billion, which is a huge number. So these two things are incongruous, but they really rely on each other. So if we don't get Chinese goods, right? Let's say the tariffs are too high. Americans stop importing a lot less from China.
Yeah, they stop importing plastic bobbleheads.
Exactly. Without these, so this right here, this comes with a sales tax, which I would pay to the American government, which the American government would use to then pay the interest that we owe on Chinese debt. And China understands this very well, right? If they put on these, quote unquote reciprocal tariffs and they start bidding up the prices of things, we don't import their products, which we're arguably the largest importer in the world of Chinese goods. We don't get sales tax. We don't have revenues to pay their debt. And frankly, look, if you're a creditor if you're a borrower rather in the US, okay, you Jack Stone, you go to the bank and you take out $100,000 loan and you choose not to pay it. Well, they kind of have the economic power to crush you, right? You'll hit bankruptcy. You're not going to have any credit. You won't get any new liquidity. So you'll rely on your income streams and, hopefully you can survive, but you might not get an apartment. You might not, you can't get a car. There's a lot of weight that a bank has over you, right? When you owe them money. When you're two governments holding each other's paper, right? So China's holding our paper and we've made this obligation to repay them. Really, the only enforcement is the armies and threats of using the army. So it's a little different on a global scale, right? So China, without resulting to, actual warfare, needs to figure out what's the optimal point where they can tariff us, we tariff them, they can get repaid. If America turns to any country and says, hey, all that paper you're holding? It's worthless. Yeah, we're not paying you back. What do you do? Yeah. Right. So
I've seen firsthand how the right platform can make all the difference for advisors and their clients. With decades of collective experience in investment sales, debt placement, and equity placement services, Graysteel has built a culture where collaboration, relationships, and excellence power results. Backed by concierge-level infrastructure, proprietary technology, and an entrepreneurial mindset, the firm enables professionals like myself and our team to deliver tailored solutions, precision-driven pricing strategies, AI-enhanced insights, and exceptional value at every stage. Discover how top professionals are scaling their business and continually unlocking new opportunities for their clients at graysteel.com.
Every country sees that.
But it's all related. It's all interrelated, right? Because everyone's relying on the strength of the U.S. economy, the U.S. dollar, and the U.S. to back Treasuries. So there's a couple of things right now that's making, and none of us, you and I, are not economists. Frankly, I don't know if economists really know what's been going on over the last few days. But these Treasury swings are probably a little bit of a few things. It's the trade tensions going on, particularly with China. It's the foreign holdings concerns that we just talked about, how much debt China has of ours and what they could do to potentially manipulate the market with all that debt. If they offload all of that debt, that's going to have a huge consequence with, where yields are. And the other thing is hedge funds using their power to create these leveraged basis trades.
Yeah.
And then there's the uncertainty around just the Fed's policy and what the Fed's going to do over the course of the year. So I think in 2 weeks, the Treasury market went from pricing in 1 to 2 Fed rate cuts to 4 cuts and now 3 cuts for 2025.
It's all over the place. The implications are huge. They are long lasting. And that's why, people like Ray and other, like Howard Marks, all these big, fund leaders who are so experienced in macro. Howard Marks actually says he hates macroeconomics, doesn't try to forecast it. But what these guys are looking at is the long-term effect. And they're trying to tell you, stop looking at the market, and the market swings. The market always swings. This has happened ever since its inception. But what you do need to look at is what this standstill looks like. Like, imagine we're watching a Western movie and America and China, are two cowboys that have their pistols pointed at each other right now. It's like, what do you do to really get your point across to the other side? The tariffs are only part of it, right? So yes, we try to get ahead economically over another country. What we're really trying to do is influence the policy, right? So like what the EU is doing right now is they said, okay, we'll drop the tariffs, and they start changing some of the policy and fees that they charge. Like, tariffs aren't the only place where we end up getting money from other countries. And what you're really trying to do is rewrite the agreements for trade that we're going to have for a long time. We can't look at this for for 4-year windows. In 4 years, it's not going to be Trump. It's going to be somebody else. The policies are going to be really different unless you make a global impact as to who your partners are for the next 5 decades. So it's an interesting thing to watch. I myself, you, the rest of the world, nobody actually knows where this is going. That's my opinion. But U.S. as the reserve currency, I don't know, things could change.
Well, and that's part of, I think, some of the cause of the volatility is concerns over whether the U.S. will remain the reserve currency of the world. And I don't think it does go anywhere. If not the U.S., then where? But it's amazing how animal spirits and emotions can come into play and impact things so much.
Sure. And the other thing you brought up was the Fed, right? So when we actually look at home, right, what the Fed is doing, personally, from our perspective, I think it's a great time to buy real estate. Like, if you believe that, I think leading up to this whole tariff news, everyone was of the belief that rates hold kind of where they are. Maybe it drops 25 bips, but that's at the Fed level, so spreads would maintain.
And also with tariffs, if you believe that that's going to create a more inflationary environment again, what's a hedge against inflation? Real estate.
Yeah, but even putting that aside for a second, right? If you thought that the rates were going to hold flat, and that's how you were underwriting property, well, we had already gotten accustomed to that. We were at a year to 2 year run up of holding, well, not 2 years, but at least for the last year, everybody's been underwriting. All right, maybe the rates stay flat. Can we make things work with flat rates? Okay, fine. Which means if they went down, it only benefited you, right? As the rates go down, cap rates go down with it, right? You don't need to hold the same kind of spreads. It impacts your abilities to refi, but it really impacts your exits, which is the dominant value in most of these value add deals, right? If you're not a core buyer. There was very little prospect that the rates would go up. If anything, there's even less prospect now that the rates will go up because of the turmoil in the market. So there's so much pressure on the Fed to drop rates. But even if they don't, if they really held still, then you're just back at your baseline. So it's almost all roads converge into the value of assets going up again, which is an inflationary impact, which is like what we went through over the last few years, why the price of multifamily shot up so high, why office is starting to bounce back. It's a really interesting implication on real estate. I wish I had the right answers for where this goes, but it seems like if we're rewatching history and paying attention to the cycles, the values are going to go up again.
Yeah. I agree with you. And we just got to kind of weather the storm a bit.
By the way, that's what these REITs might be seeing. These multifamily REITs who are building now, they're taking advantage. Obviously, the broad theme is that they're taking advantage of people not entering the market. Yeah. But if you couple the lack of starts with the possibility that rates drop and they drop sooner than you thought, oh my God, they've made a killing. They've made a generational killing on their bets. Right. In the same tone, there's another group that we didn't speak about, which was Morgan Properties. Morgan's a massive owner, maybe not to the size of a UDR or MAA or Camden, but they just did a really big buy. They scooped up 11 properties, 3,000 units in the Midwest. Where in the Midwest?
You going to tell us exactly where?
No, I thought you would tell us.
Well, what's interesting is the Sun Belt's been the hot ticket for the last few years. And I think what Morgan sees and what some other players are starting to see is the Midwest was kind of overlooked. Yeah. And there's still very strong fundamentals there. So while the Sun Belt's been just getting clobbered with new product coming online and everybody who's anyone trying to invest in the Sun Belt, and don't get me wrong, love the Sun Belt. Not going anywhere, great place to invest. But you have other markets in the country that are also great markets. And, I think Morgan saw that. They now have over 100,000 units in their portfolio. So this is a big moment for Morgan.
By the way, great basis that they picked up at. So the $501 million across the 3,000 units translates to $167 a door. I feel like that's the
what
cheapest
market you're in, but sounds good to me.
Course.
And these are nice properties.
Yeah, even if you just look at median home prices across the country, right? You're far below at their basis. Like you said, they're adding to a really big portfolio. And going off the themes that we were just talking about, like they're getting the same assets in the same economic cycle that these large REITs are buying at. They're buying at a much cheaper basis, but they're capturing the same growth. Like you start to kind of see the bigger picture of what the real national developers and owners are doing and experiencing in their portfolios. You're getting control of a really big piece of the market. Mm-hmm. People aren't building. If they were building, they probably were building in the Sun Belt. We didn't see a ton of new starts in the Midwest. It was hot like over the last 2 years from a buying perspective, but not a ton of development from what we saw. Maybe I'm wrong. If you have other opinions,
no, you're right. I mean, a lot of the development's been centered around the Sun Belt. So interesting play on their end, and I think they'll do well.
Yeah. Let's talk about one more thing on the development route. So Meta and their data center play.
Yeah.
Yeah. You read about this. It was in Louisiana.
Yeah. I love Louisiana.
You know, one of my favorite things about like the articles that were written about this were?
What's that?
It goes to the American stereotype of measuring things in units of measurement that aren't,
I know where you're going
feet and yards. So
yeah.
it's twofold for me. So we always love to say, oh, like look at the size of this thing. It's the size of like 2 refrigerators, right? It's like that's not a unit of measurement. That's such an American way to look at things.
Yeah.
So the articles that we read were like the data center that Meta's building in Louisiana is the size of 70 football fields.
Yeah, because everyone knows what a football field is.
Well, if you're from Louisiana, you really do,
you
right?
Do.
So like you're upset. You're LSU, especially, like you're obsessed with the size of. But I love that it's the size of 70 football fields. Like it's such a good pander. It was so subtle and under the radar.
Saying that. Yeah, it was 70 football fields. Like cool. Well, so power is a big challenge for all these data centers. And everyone kind of understands that at this point, especially with AI. And how much power that takes. Top markets right now for data centers, Northern Virginia, traditionally been kind of the leader. They call it Data Center Alley for a reason.
Yeah.
Dallas-Fort Worth, Phoenix, Silicon Valley, Atlanta. These are markets where there's been a lot of data center development. But one thing that they all have in common is the need for power. And Louisiana has an abundance of energy and power at its disposal, or easily can get it at its disposal.
Yeah. So to your points, you need an abundance of power, and you need to be cheap. I guess it used to be that the data centers were being built not far from Silicon Valley or somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, because you want to be able to run the fiber at a short distance. But I think what people are realizing is that the fiber is not really the expense. It's just the power. If you can get the power super cheap, you can run the fiber for thousands of miles or hundreds of miles. So
Louisiana has the Haynesville Shale, so pretty easy access to natural gas.
So it sounds great for Meta, and I'm sure like the shareholders of Meta are really excited because now they're going to get this facility, past the capex. But the citizens of Louisiana are not so excited about this.
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. Point. Like some of them really are, right? I mean, this is a good thing for Louisiana.
Yeah. And it is because it creates jobs, it creates tax revenue.
That's right.
Obviously, that's beneficial for the state, but
it's also taking up 15% of Louisiana's electricity generation. And I think there's a concern about, okay, great, Meta's on the hook for 15 years is what this is supposedly for. What about after 15 years?
Yeah, so that to me is the really interesting point, right? It's
the taxpayers are on the hook for this if Meta pulls out after 15 years, essentially.
Well, I think to an extent they're on the hook, but it's like you're building I think about this the way that I think about Ford in Detroit, right? Or GM in Detroit.
Your favorite city.
It's my favorite city outside of New York. So
that's not true. There's no way that's true.
Okay. Well, New York, LA, then Detroit.
Yeah, New York, LA, Paris. Barcelona.
No, you're expanding it too much. We're talking about the US.
Fine.
New York, LA, all right, there's a couple other beautiful cities
And
in
then
LA.
Detroit. Yeah.
But Detroit's in my top 10.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's fair enough to say.
Okay.
I've been to a lot of cities. It's in my top 10. But they're building. So I was talking about Ford and GM, right? So what you're doing is you're building this massive campus where the local economy relies on jobs from this industry, right? And then when an auto manufacturer gets crushed and the town kind of decimates from the lack of jobs, you have all this infrastructure that's sitting there. It becomes vacant. There's no more tax revenue. The city stops reinvesting. People move away.
Right.
It's a manufacturing town in a sense. So what ends up happening here is if they build this 70 football field data center, they hire a bunch of people, and then, AI is changing by the second right now. So no different than the tariffs. We can tune in tomorrow and AI is wildly different because DeepSeek, actually is real and it costs $35 to make.
Energy, right.
Right. So if that's the case, well, now you're left with this facility with 500 jobs are now gone, or whatever they claim to.
Yeah, it's all for
however
nothing.
many jobs. It's all for nothing.
Yeah.
Right. It's all for nothing. And the city does pay in a sense because the security or cleaning or like upkeep of people not destroying this place is a weight on the taxpayers. But that's kind of nominal. If anything else, if the city thinks that Meta stays around for a while, they might take on other infrastructure and they might start spending on other projects and then run out of money because the tax revenue goes away. And now what? Now you have half completed projects. Yeah. You don't have jobs. It's a big impact. It's something to really think about.
Yeah.
This is happening in Texas with Elon, building his Tesla facilities.
Right.
The news is important, but if you're a busy real estate professional like me, you don't have time to skim through dozens of dry and ad-filled media outlets each day. That's why I read the CRE Daily. It's a free email newsletter that cuts through the clutter and delivers concise, witty commentary on the latest trends and transactions in commercial real estate. If you're a commercial real estate professional, you owe it to yourself to try it out and stay on top of what's happening in the industry. It's only 5 minutes a day. Visit credaily.com to sign up for free.
Well, I think any investment theoretically should be good investment for the local economy, at least in the short run. But we'll see. All right, let's talk about BTR, build to rent. I mean, this is another thing that just gets talked about a ton, and I don't want to overdo it. But 2024 was a killer year for that space. Builders completed 39,000 new homes in 2024, which was a 15.5% year over year increase per Yardi Matrix.
Okay.
So pretty crazy. I mean, what's happening here with BTR? What's the move? You think this continues to be a thing? You think this is a fad? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Again, kind of a double-edged sword here. So we've been talking about this for months now, that there's a really deep lack of supply on the single family home side.
Yeah.
Right. And it's an astronomical number for us to build and fully fulfill this supply imbalance. There's no developer in the nation, even if they did it all together, they can't fulfill the backlog.
Right.
That's our understanding.
And not everyone wants to live in an apartment box.
I think American values, if you can own a home and afford to do so, you will.
Yeah, but no one can own a home right now.
Right. So that's the other side of this is we're still in this flux where you're kind of starting to hear the sentiment of people wanting to fight the BlackRocks and Fidelities and Vanguards of the world who are in a way owners. I say in a way because they are the money behind the operators.
Yeah.
So, and everybody likes to point a finger and say BlackRock's buying up all the homes.
They love to.
They are, but they're a limited partner. There's still somebody who's responsible for these decisions, but nonetheless, thematically, that's what they're investing in. They're investing in the ownership. They're buying up available homes. They can do it a lot faster than you and I can. They can spend a lot more money on it. And frankly, they end up setting the growth because they can control a vast share of the properties.
Well, top BTR completions in 2024, Phoenix, 4,400 units, Dallas, 3,100 units, Atlanta, 3,000 units.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like a lot, but it's I don't think it's that much when you think about these. These are major metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
Over 500,000 people living in them.
Yeah.
Tons of people continuing to still move there. Right. It's like we're kind of getting to the point where we focus on the numbers and forget about the migration trend.
Sure, I think you're right. A lot of Sunbelt markets, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people moving down there, and they need somewhere to live, and they want to live the American dream and have a real yard and real space.
Yeah. Look, so, I'll be the first to admit I get super jealous when I get a Zillow notification saying, look at this 5-bedroom house just outside of Dallas.
By the way,
$500,000.
They always say that. It's always like somewhere in Texas.
Yeah.
It's like, look what you can buy for $500,000 in, middle of nowhere, Texas.
I'm sure if I go, another 200 miles north or 300 miles north and end up in like Oklahoma, it's even cheaper.
It's changing. It's changing. You could go out to Prosper outside Dallas now. It used to be just farmland a few years ago. And now I think, the average house is like 500,000.
Look, it's all perspective. You have to look at the data behind how fast wages are growing or how slow rather. And if you're in a place like New York, let's say you were an investment banker, right? If you're an investment banker in your first 5 years, like you're living with roommates in New York.
Totally.
Right? It used to be that.
It's not what it's cracked up to be.
If you were the investment banker in the early 2000s, you were the hotshot. You probably owned the place.
Right.
You owned the place. So assets just outgrew wages so fast and by such a large margin that things are different. But if you're that guy and you can find the same kind of work and keep your income up and move to a Phoenix per se or Atlanta, you might be in a much better spot.
Yeah, agree. Well, what else we got? Is that it for now?
I think that's it. It's been a long week already.
Yeah, I don't know. Between now and the next episode, we'll have an entire new cycle of craziness.
Yeah,
no one can predict. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, until next time.